Ancient Earth History, Part 6, Atlantis and Mu, Chapter 1, by Robert Dawson, March 7th, 2024.
On a fateful day a little over 11,500 years ago, the war between the two most technologically advanced states on planet Earth was about to come to a dramatic end. Cheerful Atlanteans had just begun celebrating their fresh victory over Mu, their once close ally and now bitter rival. The war force of Greater Atlantis was staggering, consisting of an army of 4,030,000 men, 123,000 miniature beam ships for close Earth combat, another 16,431 beam ships equipped with heat weapons that could eliminate all material within fractions of a second, and yet another 24,230 overkill beamers installed in mid-range beam ships. But the weapons developed by Mu scientists were in many ways even more dangerous and more destructive than everything of the Atlanteans altogether. By means of atomic and electro-energetic energies, they could convert entire small planets into all-destroying space bombs by pulling them out of their orbit and steer them onto a carefully determined target with extreme precision. And with this in mind, a planetoid in the asteroid belt of several kilometers diameter was chosen and brought onto course towards Earth, more specifically, toward Greater Atlantis.
Contact Report 60, Thursday, the 8th of July, 1976, 14:03 hours. Only less than half a day before the full-scale attack of Atlantis against Mu, the deadly space bomb was completed, a death messenger of human insanity and of tremendous consequence. When Atlantis undertook the attack, the producers of the death missile were informed within a few seconds, by means of hyperwave impulses, about the oncoming events and were charged with allowing the death missile to take off. A few seconds after receiving the command, on the side of the planetoid facing away from the Earth, 1,000 suns appeared to race into the dark space, and with gigantic force, the monster started moving. Very quickly, the speed of the messenger of death increased, steered by scientists controlling the monster, who were sitting on the planetoid, completing their task, and thereby were doomed to die. In the meantime, on the Earth, the Atlanteans eliminated the city of Mu and leveled it. The victorious Atlanteans, however, returned to their gigantic island kingdom and celebrated their victory achieved over Mu in a true delirium of joy. However, their joy did not last long, because they had barely begun their festivities when messages came thick and fast in regard to the danger rushing towards them through space. As if out of nothing, a dark celestial body suddenly appeared, which advanced at frantic speed with its far side blasting off blinding light. Two seconds later, the planetoid began to glow like a supernova and created a heat of more than 340,000 degrees. In a split second, vast areas of country burnt to smoldering ash when the enormous heat fell down from the speeding giant. Then the space bomb suddenly exploded at less than 172 kilometers altitude and transformed into many thousands of small and larger meteorites, which, like small atomic bombs, were catapulted to Earth and with devastating impact destroyed everything that got in the way and which was in the areas of impact and shock waves.
The two great states who once lived peacefully together for thousands of years and shared a common extraterrestrial origin had now completely annihilated each other. The true story of Atlantis and Mu, as told by the Plejaren to Billy Meyer and recorded in the contact notes, spans tens of thousands of years and is interspersed with Earth's long and rich extraterrestrial history that includes Ishwish, Eris, and Hyperborea. It is no wonder, then, that our modern society is so fascinated with the topic and yearns to know the truth that is buried in our collective subconscious, as exemplified by the spawning of countless iterations of the story in the form of books, graphic novels, movies, and television series. And yet for others, the memory is so horrific they would rather dismiss it as a myth that never happened at all, rather than learn the lesson.
However, the form in which Greater Atlantis and Mu were destroyed was of such intrigues and full of horror that, in the history of the human beings of the Earth, it will probably never be paralleled. The intriguers stirred up malicious machinations between the Atlanteans and the citizens of Mu, which led to mutual actions of war. Sim Ya Se, 60th Contact, Thursday, 8th of July, 1976, 1403 Hrs.
This historical pattern of malicious machinations and intrigues that Simya Se identifies must be fully recognized and learned from, in a wiseful way to enable Earth humans to move forward in evolutive consciousness to someday join a peaceful federation of like-minded humans throughout the galaxy. According to the Pleiaren, there are two individuals whose writings on the disaster which befell Atlantis and Mu stand out amongst all the others as being closest to the truth, and for good reason. The ancient Greek philosopher and teacher, Plato learned of Atlantis from his grandfather Solon, who was told by priests in Egypt that Atlantis was once a great empire which controlled a large region to the west. Then, in a single day, the city suffered an earthquake and sank beneath the sea and vanished. Plato recorded the story of Atlantis in two of his most important dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, with Critias being the primary source about the near-utopian society and its decline. The other writer is Otto Muck, who in 1954 wrote Über alles Atlantis, which was later translated to English and published in Britain in 1978 as The Secret of Atlantis. The book brings forth compelling, scientific, archaeological, and geological evidence that Atlantis was real just as Plato earlier described it. While Plato describes a gradual moral decay of a once great and peaceful society and its ultimate demise, Otto Muck confirms Plato's premise that Atlantis had a real existence and was not simply used as a moral allegory. In a not-so-odd coincidence, Otto Muck himself had been a developer of advanced technology that then became misused in warfare. He invented the U-boat Schnorkel for the Germans in WW2 and worked as one of their rocket scientists in Peenemünde. And yes, he came over to the US like many other former German scientists after the war.
Extract from the 60th Contact, Thursday, the 8th of July, 1976, 1403 hours.
Look at this. Here, I have received a magazine article from one of our group members, in that a man named Otto Muck, a German physicist, has calculated that Atlantis must have been destroyed at exactly 19:00 hours on the 6th of June of the year 8498 BC, and indeed precisely as you have just told it, only that he thinks that it was a purely cosmic catastrophe.
That does not surprise me. The explanations of this Earth-human muck are very well known to us. Also the fact that he, apart from the calculation of the year, is very close to the truth in certain things. But he must indeed know this, because only through one of his earlier personalities were the legends about Atlantis recorded in writing for posterity for the first time 2,122 years ago.
You are driving me crazy. You actually think that one of the earlier personalities of this muck was the former Plato?
I do not think so. We know it very exactly. Here, just draw a comparison with these two pictures. Here is a bust of Plato, and here is the picture of Otto Muck. Does anything stand out for you?
Photograph of Otto Muck. A bust of Plato on display in the Vatican Museum.
Man, girl, that fits. Both of them are almost the same faces. Consequently, Otto Muck must still today show a relationship with his former existences.
For many years now, we have been keeping an eye on Otto Muck, who also has been inspired by us for certain things. First, he was supposed to go public informatively on a large scale with the results of his research, in order to prepare the human beings of the Earth for the full truth about the events surrounding Atlantis and Mu at that time. This he has done on one hand through a book, and on the other hand also through the newspaper article that you have shown me. Thereby the ground is prepared to reveal the complete truth.
Extract from the 219th Contact, Tuesday, the 16th of June, 1987, 1:30 am.
There used to be 4 different Atlantises, so the new Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Heracles, between the Azores and Spain. Then there was Lesser Atlantis, which used to exist in the Mediterranean in the area of Santorini. And furthermore, there is Old Atlantis to be named, on which later, after its demise, Troy was built, while Greater Atlantis existed in the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlanteans of Greater Atlantis were the rulers over all 4 Atlantises and their peoples, because all of them were of the same origin. Thus there existed a central government, whereby the administration of the different Atlantises happened through delegates, who were called latent.
Note, latent is a Latin word referring to those who litigate.
Extract from 844th Contact, Friday, the 5th of May, 2023, 18:11 hours.
But then I have a few questions. You were together referring to Ptah in ancient and very early times, so also in places that no longer exist, such as Atlantis and...
Yes, Plato still described that. Consequently, I was already interested in it as a boy. But they were different places and settlements that were called Atlantis and were very far apart. They were all smaller and larger places, but the actual Atlantis that Plato wrote about was not just a place or a city, but...
Here, Billy alludes to something else about Atlantis, but doesn't say and excludes it from the notes.
Extract from the 60th Contact, Thursday, the 8th of July, 1976, 14:03 hours.
The island empire of Atlantis, however, sank within a few minutes in the raging waters of the Atlantic, without even leaving one single surviving life form behind. The capital city, which was built like a beam ship, was torn into several pieces and sank with the foundation.
This is interesting. Here is the only information the Plejaren give that possibly offers some insight into the Atlantean aesthetic. But it is only a small bit and limited to the capital city itself. It is difficult to know how literal Simya say means that the capital city was built like a beam ship, and we don't know which type of beam ship that she refers to, so we are stuck with a certain amount of speculation, since the comparison could be manifested in a number of different ways. Greater Atlantis was completely destroyed, so we must look elsewhere for archaeological evidence of their culture. Guided by information from the contact notes, we turn our attention to the other 3 Atlantises. The Minoan culture found within the Mediterranean Sea in the area of Santorini, we are told in the notes, is where Lesser Atlantis was located. It was founded, built, and ruled by Jeshrish Caryatide, who was the wife of Jeshrish Atlant, who had built up and ruled over Greater Atlantis. And it was Caryatide's cousin, Muras, who founded, built, and ruled over the city of Mu. CCR's Urfundu. The partial image on the left is from a computer-generated 3D model of the Palace of Knossos, a product of the Atlantean Minoan culture on the island of Crete. It is considered an accurate recreation based on a plethora of archaeological material. However, it was not really a palace in the traditional sense, but rather a large facility for communal living. Along the top exterior fascia, above the columns, can be found a circle motif which runs in a horizontal band. Overall, there is a composition of rectangles and void space between columns utilizing the proportion of the golden rectangle and phi ratio, which later became more significantly in classical Greek architecture. In the middle is a similar computer-generated model done by National Geographic of the ancient city of Tenochtitlan in Mexico. In a previous article, Ancient Earth History, Part 3, it is explained that Tenochtitlan was founded by refugees who had come from across the ocean to the east and built the city in the likeness of their homeland, which they called Aztlan. The same horizontal circle motif can be found in this model as occurs in the Minoan Palace of Knossos. And on the far right is a temple located in the foothills of the Himalayan mountains near the outskirts of the Gobi Desert, where Mu was once located. Again, we see the same horizontal circle motif and similar rectangular compositions and color palette. Could these circles actually represent suns? And is this related somehow to the sons of the sun mentioned by Ptah in Contact Report 39? Are the underground Agartians called sons of the sun because they are descendants from the scientists of Mu who had harnessed the power of the sun? Or is it all just coincidence?
39th Contact, Wednesday, the 3rd of December, 1975, 1:37 hours.
However, this much may be said, that in the vicinity of Shigatse and Shampula is the underground realm of Agharta, the capital and center of distant descendants of extraterrestrials on the Earth. This is the center of the actual secrets that hold a gigantic power in themselves. This city is controlled by the race of the Sons of the Sun.
Not to be overlooked is old Atlantis, upon which the city of Troy would later be built. The city was actually destroyed and rebuilt several times over the course of ancient history. On the left is an illustrated image of the royal palace and adjacent buildings on the Acropolis, 14th to 13th century BC, and is identified as being a reconstruction of what Troy looked like by Archaeology Illustrated. It bears a striking resemblance to the Minoan architectural style at the Palace of Knossos, which is shown in the middle and right images for comparison.
Billy, Figu Bulletin Number 61.
However, on the island of Crete, situated off the mainland, a people with a highly developed culture were settled, the Minoans, also called the Atlanteans. One day, far in the north, in the open ocean north of Crete, the volcanic island Santorini, modern Thera, exploded and sank into the ocean. Consequently, a giant tsunami devastated the island of Crete, from which the Minoans fled to the Greek mainland. There they encountered the wild, uncultured, and primitive Hellenist descendants, who were instructed by the Minoans in all arts and trades, as well as in written and spoken language. Thus, the Greeks got to know culture. In their level of consciousness, the Hellenists themselves had never been on even footing with the Minoans, and so over further centuries, they remained on the same level of consciousness to which the Minoans had brought them. They lived in accord with that and made no progress. And until around 2,000 years ago, they glorified their half-gods whose highest god was Zeus, who allegedly is supposed to have lived with his sub-gods on Mount Olympus.
In the three images seen, we can see examples of the arts and trades which the Minoans brought to the ancient Greeks, which Billy spoke of. On the left is an isolated wall area of the Palace of Knossos. In the middle is a photograph of a recent reconstruction of an archaeological site near Pylos, southern Greece, Bronze Age Mycenaean palace, around 1250 BC. On the right is the Mycenaean palace of Eclina in northern Greece. Image by Archaeology Illustrated.
The evidence of advanced ancient technology.
In the foreword of his book, Atlantis Rising, Otto Muck brings up the fascinating discovery of the device pulled up from the depths of the sea in the Santorini area, simply referred to as the Antikythera mechanism, because for a long time it wasn't clear what it was for. Muck was so impressed with early reports that he arranged to have a special viewing of it and examine it before publishing his book. The mysterious Antikythera mechanism, shown in the top right panel, was discovered by sponge divers in a shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. About the size of a shoebox, it is now determined to be an elaborate ancient computer consisting of gears and dials with numerous tiny inscriptions written on them. Working models reassembled back to its original condition have confirmed that it could predict astronomical events such as eclipses and even determine when various athletic games took place, among other functions.
The Antikythera device is just one of many artifacts that give testament of a once great and highly advanced civilization. And some of these are on display at the Kotsanis Museum of Ancient Greek Technology in Athens, shown on the left. The Greek mathematician and engineer, Hero of Alexandria, recorded the use of an instrument called the pulkos, which, as well as being able to suck out substances into the chamber through a long, thin needle, the pulkos could also be used to inject liquids into the body. It is thought that this syringe had been invented around 300 years earlier by Ctesibius of Alexandria, who was also responsible for a number of other innovations, including the water clock. The ancient syringe was a similar size and shape to its modern counterpart, but made of copper. Later in the 2nd century AD, the Greek physician Galen used syringes made of brass, which he is said to have used on the eyes as a cure for cataracts. The flying pigeon or dove of Archytas is described as a self-propelled, autonomous flying bird which was hidden underground in the courtyards of temples to create a miracle whenever a sacrifice was made at the altar.
Androids and robots.
The story of Talos, who was made and not born, was first mentioned around 700 BC by the Greek writer Hesiod in one of his poems. It describes Talos as a giant bronze man built by Hephaestus, the Greek god of invention and blacksmithing. Talos was commissioned by Zeus, the king of Greek gods, to protect the island of Crete from invaders. He marched around the island 3 times every day, or alternatively flew around in other versions and hurled boulders at approaching enemy ships. If an enemy managed to land on the island, Talos's body would heat up into a glow, and he would kill the invader with a fatal embrace. At his core, the giant had a tube running from his head to one of his feet that carried a mysterious life source of the gods the Greeks called Ichor.
The android robot Talos is depicted on a 5th century BC mixing vessel now on display in the Giada National Archaeological Museum in Italy. The ancient Greek robot is portrayed on a Cretan coin from the Minoan palace of Phaistos and dated around 300 Non. Tau. B.C. The winged Talon, or Talos, is armed with a stone which he would throw at perceived enemies of Crete. Another ancient text, Argonautica, which dates to the 3rd century BC Naus, describes how sorceress Medea defeated Talos by removing a bolt at his ankle and letting the ichor fluid flow out. Talos is depicted in the 1963 film Jason and the Argonauts, although he appears much bigger than in the original stories. A video clip, a TED-Ed animated video on the myth of Talos by Adrienne Mayer.
The creation of Pandora.
The story of Pandora, first described in Hesiod's Theogony, is another example of an android. Although much later versions portray Pandora as an innocent woman who unknowingly opened a box of evil, Hesiod's original described Pandora as an artificial woman built by Hephaestus and sent to Earth on the orders of Zeus, with no mention of a box. The poet Hesiod tells us Pandora, like Talos, was made, not born. Having been commissioned by all-powerful Zeus and designed to his specifications by Hephaestus, the god of invention, Pandora was a lifelike android created to look like a bewitching maiden. Her purpose was to entrap mortals as a manifestation of Kalos Kakon, evil hidden in beauty. Is a depiction of Pandora on the side of an ancient Greek vase, c. 460 to 450 BCE, painted in Attica and attributed to the Naiad painter. Pandora stands at the center, looking straight ahead with her vacuous and soulless eyes. In contrast, the gods on both sides of her are looking sideways as they bestow their gifts upon her. These gifts are the source of her name, Pan, or all, plus Dora, or called gifts, and they prepared her for a special purpose. Pandora received stunning, irresistible beauty from Aphrodite and a bold and cunning spirit from Hermes.
Is the female android from the 1927 film Metropolis by Fritz Lang.
In addition to creating Talos and Pandora, Hephaestus made other self-moving objects, including a set of automated servants who looked like women but were made of metal. According to Homer's recounting of the myth, Hephaestus gave these artificial women the gods' knowledge, which could be considered a reference to artificial intelligence. In Contact Report 592, Billy states that the story of Pandora's box was a myth and untrue, but falls short of actually stating that Pandora herself did not exist. Furthermore, in Contact Report 317, we find...
Then another question. Were there early connections between Aristotle, Apollo, Zeus and consorts, and the ancient Lyrans and Vegans?
No.
What is interesting and telling about this short interchange is that both parties are speaking from the knowledge that they know Apollo, Zeus, and consorts to be real personages.
The robotic servant of Philon.
In addition to Hephaestus, there was Philo of Byzantium, 3rd century BC, who created a human-shaped robot that would dispense wine when a cup was placed in its hand, according to the writings of Hero of Alexandria in the 1st century AD, and it was once placed in the market of Alexandria. He also wrote about automatic vending machines, which could dispense blessings that were placed outside of certain temples.
The humanoid figure dressed as a maid holds a jug in its right hand and, as hidden gears click and whir, lifts it and pours wine into a cup that a bystander has placed into the palm of its left. This recreation can be seen at the Katsanis Museum of Ancient Greek Technology in Athens, Greece. A second recreated version is on display as part of a larger showing called The High-Tech Inventions of Ancient Greeks.
Where was Mu exactly? 55th Contact, Monday, the 14th of June, 1976, 10:37 hours.
Great Atlantis was destroyed and sank into the sea through war feuds with the inhabitants of Mu, which lay in the Chinese Gobi Desert. But Mu was also destroyed and ceased to exist, leaving only the underground city of Agartha. Mu had been a land and likewise the capital. Mu was a country like any other. However, the city on the surface and the underground city of Agartha, each ruled by a man and a woman, were created by extraterrestrials. Neither the country nor the cities were of special importance, except that they had been built and inhabited by extraterrestrials from the Lyra system and also destroyed again.
So, the name MU had been used to refer to a capital city, a country, and other cities within the country. Could the country of Mu have extended beyond just the Gobi Desert? In a more recent contact report, Billy presents the possibility that it could have.
871st Contact, Monday, the 4th of December, 2023, 11:21 hours.
Ah, yes, I think I know what you're talking about. The description probably refers to a land where today there are only islands, because the empire has sunk into the sea or something. The area there was vast land, but also had a large jungle where a tribe of cannibals lived that I met with Svath. But they were peaceful and only ate those of their own tribe when they died. They did not wage any wars or raids, and I also do not know if there were any other cannibal tribes or other natives living in the jungle. But there was a large city far outside the jungle where really big giants lived. Actually giants, like Andron is, 5 to 6 meters tall. I do not remember what Svath called them and where they came from, but as far as I know it is said today that there was a country called Mu. But if it really was the land where Svath and I were then there really is nothing left of it. As I saw in the 1940s when Svath and I went to see what it looks like today, and how everything has changed since we were there about 2 or 3 decades ago in the past. If it really is that area, then there are really only a few islands there today, because everything has sunk into the sea, and the giants, or the giants who live there, must have left when the area presumably disappeared into the sea.
This latest revelation by Billy may actually help explain the mystery of Nan Madol an ancient city which disappeared into the sea. As Simyase explained in CR60, the planetoid that hit Greater Atlantis had caused reverberations of tsunamis and flooding across the planet.
Contact Report 60, Thursday, the 8th of July, 1976, 14:03 hours.
It was as if the world was going under, because the power of impact of the debris was greater than many hydrogen bombs such as you insanely possess today. Through all of this happening, the wild ocean was thrown up into a gigantic tsunami wave, which surged forward with frantic speed and a height of 2,300 meters, pulled along everything and simply let entire countries sink into the water, or at least destroyed whatever was in its path.
Many researchers of Mu, and in particular James Churchward in his book The Lost Continent of Mu 1926, have examined the ancient and sunken megalithic city situated off the coast of Pohnpei, a part of the Caroline Islands in Micronesia, and have become convinced that it was once a part of Mu.
Nan Madol.
An old legend held in the Caroline Islands located in the West Pacific north of New Guinea and south of Japan says that one day long ago some white strangers arrived in shining boats and terraformed islands.
They did not speak our language, but there were people of our race with them so that we could make ourselves understood, even if their terminology was somewhat different and their customs had for long years been adapted to those of the foreigners, who told beautiful stories about a land by the sea with wonderful buildings and happy people. These newcomers taught us strange miracles, and so there arose new islands on the ocean. Our ships sailed safely on the waves, and no enemy, no matter how strong, could defeat us. But one day a big storm began and managed to achieve what the enemies had failed to do. Superb buildings were swept away within hours, and once flowering islands full of songs were sent with their inhabitants to the bottom.
Nan Madol is mostly sunken, and what ruins that do remain lie off the eastern shore of the island of Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia. The megalithic city consists of a series of small artificial islands linked by a network of canals and is often called the Venice of the Pacific. The name Nan Madol means spaces between, and is a reference to the canals that crisscross the ruins. The original name was Sao Nan Leng Reef of Heaven. Like the pyramids and other megalithic monuments, building Nan Madol required a tremendous effort and expertise so that the great number of stones, weighing anywhere from 5 to 50 tons, could be moved and raised to where they were needed. To erect walls 10 feet wide and up to 37 feet tall, 250 million pieces of rock, 700,000 metric tons, had to be brought in from elsewhere. The locals say that the ancient builders used magic. With sounds of varying pitch, a magician made basalt logs fly through the air like birds and settle down in their appointed places. While making a documentary movie about Nan Madol for the Discovery Channel in 1995, all attempts to transport panels by raft weighing over 1 ton had failed.
The Giants of Nan Madol.
In the early 20th century, when the island was under German rule, the governor of the island, Victor Berg, entered a sealed tomb of Nan Madol and opened coffins of the ancient island rulers. He found skeletons of giants 3 meters tall. The Pohnpei people believed them to be the natives of the vanished continent of Mu, sunk into the Pacific Ocean during a great calamity 12,000 years ago. Their stories include 3 distinct races of giants: a human-like species, capable of flight, a simian race of giants who could fly and live under the sea, and a third strain of mega-giants, best described as worker drones who labored beneath the sea. In the early 1900s, researchers recorded a popular legend about the Kona, a cannibalistic race of giants.
The lost platinum coffins of the kings.
Before WW, when the Japanese controlled the island of Pohnpei, Japanese scientists discovered that the existing ruins of Nan Madol built upon coral reef was only a piece of the puzzle. That in fact, Nan Madol extended further out into the ocean and beneath the waves, that it was actually an entire sunken city. It was there that the Japanese were said to have found huge platinum coffins on the ocean floor. Incredibly, when they broke up the coffins in order to bring them to the surface, they purportedly found the skeletal remains of giant humans over 10 feet tall inside them. Divers smashed the coffins underwater and brought up the pieces of platinum. Suddenly, the main export of the island to Japan, vanilla, copra, sago, and mother of pearl, was supplanted by platinum. In 1939, a German explorer and author named Herbert Rittlinger, who had visited Nan Madol during this time that it was under Japanese control, wrote of what had been found there in his book, The Measureless Ocean. According to Rittlinger, the discoveries off the shores of Nan Madol, in fact, went far beyond platinum coffins.
Excerpt from The Measureless Ocean by Herbert Rittlinger.
Beneath the ocean was a brilliant and splendid center of a celebrated kingdom that had existed there untold millennia ago. The reports of fabulous wealth had enticed pearl divers and Chinese merchants to investigate the seabed secretly, and the divers had all risen from the depths with incredible tales. They had been able to walk on the bottom on well-preserved streets overgrown with mussels and coral. Down below, there were countless stone vaults, pillars, and monoliths. Carved stone tablets hung on the remains of clearly recognizable houses. What the pearl divers did not find was discovered by Japanese divers with modern equipment. They confirmed with their finds what the traditional legends of Pohnpei reported, the vast wealth in precious metals, pearls, and bars of silver.
In the 1970s and 1980s, archaeologists noted an extensive network of tunnels and caves at Nan Madol, leading out into the ocean. One team followed this network to a collection of stone pillars and structures some 100 feet under the water, speculating that it was only the start of a vast network of underwater ruins. But since then, no full-scale investigation has been undertaken to determine what might lay beneath the ocean. Here is a short documentary about Nan Madol, ancient floating city built by giants. Just south of Nan Madol live the masked men of Papua, New Guinea shown on the left. Their history records that they immigrated from Asia about 15,000 years ago. Examples of their cultural art can be seen on display in museums, including depictions of a bird-like animal-human life form. Shown in the middle left is a wood carving, and in the middle right, a wood bark painting. These life forms are identified in the contact notes as cherubim and have been depicted in multiple ancient sites, such as in Sumerian and Babylonian stone reliefs, rock carvings around Easter Island, and in ancient Indian art, often accompanied with a member from the blue-skinned race.
69th Contact, Friday, the 10th of December, 1976, 0:41 hours.
After this conquest, Viracocha settled with a special bodyguard of cherubim on the small island Mott, which is situated in front of Easter Island and which you call Motunui, or similar to my knowledge today. At that time it was called Mott because the cherubim were animal-human life forms. In this case, they were all bird-like.
Coming up in the next article, Ancient Earth History, Part 7, Atlantis and Mu. Chapter 2, The Early History of Atlantis, Mu and more.